Power to the Pod is back, but with a twist. Our Miami Dolphins mailbag filled with 2024 mock drafts that I'm going to roast here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting. You can find our shows on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Tip of the cap to our everydayers, because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 guaranteed. Win or lose, visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. I have solicited mock drafts from the fan base, and I thought this would be a fun twist on Power to the Pod, which makes its triumphant return here on Friday, April 12th. 2024. We are less than 2 weeks away from the start of the 2024 NFL Draft. I am pushing through these final player evaluations to make sure I get a Dolphins board all put together for us. But in the meantime, putting the show and the content in your hands, who do you all collectively want to see drafted for the Miami Dolphins? And this is a good opportunity for us to kind of spotlight some day three guys. Obviously, the Dolphins have a number of picks in that stratosphere. Kind of get through the galaxy-brained ideas of the fan base and the trades. Obviously, everybody wants to kind of go trade crazy, and I get it. So let's dive in. I got about 30 mock drafts that had been sent to me, and we'll start with this first one here, which comes from 905 phone number in the text for the old Dolphins subtext. Trade down from 21 to 29, picks up a second round pick. Looks like 21 and 158 were sent out. This is courtesy of Pro Football Network's mock draft simulator. A three-piece of day two draft picks: Byron Murphy, defensive tackle, Texas; Jackson Powers Johnson, center from Oregon, slides to 55. And then wide receiver Xavier Legette at 57. Muhammad Kamara, edge rusher, tight end Tip Ryman from Illinois are highlighting the day three picks. And this trade back also netted a day two pick in 2025. Dream come true type scenario, right? I think here's the thing that I struggle with, and this is not a Pro Football Network observation. This is every single mock draft simulator. You ultimately end up getting, and I know this because I was pretty hands-on with working a mock draft simulator during the time that I had a draft network. I was kind of the puppet master there for a while as far as how that worked. When you code how it's supposed to pull players off, you end up getting bottlenecks, and then there's surplus values, and then you get runs that are kind of disproportionate. I don't think any one of those players is going to be available in any of those spots. I'd be stunned if Byron Murphy made it to 29. I'd be stunned if Jackson Powers Johnson made it to 55, and I'd be stunned if Xavier Legette made it to 57. That makes a great mock, and you took what the board gives you, and more power to you for doing so. So a good mock in that regard. The challenge that I just have is I look at those players. I think the player I'd be least surprised to see at the spot they got picked is probably Jackson Powers Johnson out of the top three guys. Let's see. This one went a little cornerback crazy. First pick at 21 was Troy Fautanu, Washington tackle. That's one of the utopian outcomes in this class for me. So you're off to a good start. Pick 55, Braylon Trice, University of Washington edge rusher. And then we went with corner MJ Devonshire from Pittsburgh at 158. Corner Kalen Carson from Wake Forest at 184. The Wisconsin center Tanner Bertolini at 198. And another corner from Maryland in the 7th round. You did go corner crazy. That was from Mark. And this was the ESPN simulator, which just recently dropped. I think that came out this week, as a matter of fact. So, Mark, I like the Fautanu pick a lot. I like Kalen Carson and Bertolini as potential fits on day 3 for Miami. I know some people think this Wisconsin center might be one of the best 3-4 centers in the class. The athletic profile is really good. So I'd be surprised if he was there that late. Braylon Trice is kind of the name that we haven't really talked about at all on this show yet. And what I'd say with Braylon Trice, the production profile is outstanding. He's one of the more productive, consistent pass rushers. The hurdle that I have with Braylon Trice is he cut a bunch of weight to come into the combine and then ran 4.7. So he is heavy hands. He's got a pretty good menu as far as how he attacks you as a player, as a pass rusher off the edge. But first step explosiveness is the big question that I have there. And with his body type too, he's not really the longest. And so now you have kind of questions about the length along with the first step. It just kind of puts me in this Curtis Weaver type. Like, he profiles kind of similarly to Curtis Weaver. Case in point, at 6'3", he came in at 245 at the combine with 32.5-inch arms. And then had a 1.65 10-yard split, which is 41st percentile for edge rushers. So second round for Trice, I don't think he came in and helped himself. Now, if he cut the 245 and then ran a 4.50 with a 1.55 10-yard split, I think that totally changes the ballgame. But with 12th percentile length at 7th percentile weight, knowing you cut to it and then had a 41st percentile 10-yard split, I think I have too many questions with the athletic profile for Braylon Trice, particularly in the second round. I'm going to be a little bit lower on him than consensus. So that is feedback there. Now, we got a lot more mocks coming your way, but before we do, I did have somebody a couple weeks out who reached out to me and told me that one of the highlights of his day with his son is getting in the car and putting on Locked On Dolphins. So I want to give a special shout out to Roman. Appreciate you and your dad for listening in the car. Really cool to hear from your dad about how much you enjoy listening to Locked On Dolphins. And hope you enjoy this Power to the Pod, which we go through everybody's mock drafts and get you guys ready for draft day. Now, we have more mock drafts coming your way, so make sure that you stick with us. That is next here on Locked On Dolphins. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time. Your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home the dub. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit available only to U.S. customers. So let's get into more mocks, since we have only hit a couple. Let's see. This one is also courtesy of the Pro Football Network. It involves a big we went big trade down. We got out of the first round altogether. This was a trade down to 38 and recouped a first round pick in 2025 and a day 2 pick from the Tennessee Titans. If the Titans want to play ball and you could get to that stratosphere and pick up 2 top 100 picks while also getting a day 3 pick in this year's class, it's not really a trade scenario that we'd gone into and explored, but that's kind of hard to turn down, I'm going to be honest. So from a Galaxy Brain trade perspective, Devin, this mock's from Devin, you pull that off, good for you. I would selfishly wish for Miami that you netted a higher pick in this year's class than 106 to move down, 17 spots. Because that's really all that was added. But with that said, at 38, you draft Christian Haynes, the guard from Connecticut, about the same range that the Dolphins pick Robert Hunt. It would be Robert Hunt's replacement. I think that's probably the range in which if you were going to draft Christian Haynes, you have to be. I think he has a chance to sneak into the back end with some of the offensive line needy teams with interior needs on the first round. But really, first 10, 12 picks of day 2 is, I think, probably where Christian Haynes is going to end up going predictively. Then you come out and you get pretty Ricky Pearsall at 55, so I'm fired up about that. Mason Smith, defensive tackle from LSU at 106. Edge Cedric Johnson at 158 from Ole Miss. Isaac Garendo, running back from Louisville, formerly Wisconsin, at 184. Tight end Eric All at 198. And then linebacker Omar Spates, in addition to those 2 future 2025 day 1 and day 2 picks. I like this a lot. Christian Haynes has kind of been talked about consistently on this show as a get him at 55 or get him with your second pick type scenario. But if you were to move out this far, I do think you would have to tab him first. And to get 2 contributors on an offense that I think would play meaningful snaps for you between a third wide receiver and Ricky Pearsall, you could then save the money that you're talking about potentially giving to Odell Beckham and get a starter on the offensive line on the interior, but not use a premier first-round pick to get it. Is it a little bit of a bummer to not make a first-round pick this year? Sure. But I generally like this, the way that this materialized. I would say the pick that I like the least, I like Garendo. I like Eric All in the 6th round. Mason Smith's a player I have a lot of questions with. I just didn't see – this is a former 5-star recruit. And he was a 5-star recruit because he is like an all-world build. He's everything. If you were to build a defensive lineman in a lab, it would be Mason Smith. Case in point, he's 6'5", 306 pounds. He has an 84 5/8 inch wingspan, which is 95th percentile for all NFL defensive linemen to come through the combine since 2000, right? 35-inch arms. Massive player. And ran a 5 flat, which is 70th percentile, 1.75 10-yard split, which is 50th percentile, 31-inch vertical jump is 71st percentile. So again, there's height, weight, speed, linear explosiveness that exists here with Mason Smith. It's just the instinct element of the game and the feel of setting up pass rushes, consistently getting off blocks, reading and feeling blocks to discard and get quickly to the football. That all kind of left me wanting when I watched Mason Smith. So I think my critique of this mock is I would love to go a different direction with the pick at 106, especially if you're going to go with a interior defensive lineman in that spot. All right, so our next one comes from Colton. And we have a trade down to, looks like 29 with Detroit, and drafting Jackson Powers Johnson. Miami then again trades. They get aggressive to go get Roman Wilson. They draft with the extra pick that they net via the trade down from Detroit, offensive tackle Blake Fisher from Notre Dame. So Jackson Powers Johnson, Roman Wilson, and Blake Fisher. I guess the issue that I have with this mock, I like landing Roman Wilson. I like Jackson Powers Johnson. I guess my question is, a day 2 pick on another offensive lineman, particularly somebody who I think is tackle specific, and Blake Fisher plays right tackle for Notre Dame. Just feels like a little bit of overkill relative to you kind of work through the depth chart and you acknowledge all the players who are like 53-man caliber players already. And that's not to say that some of these guys aren't upgradable players, right? But you've got Armstead, Wynn, Brewer, Austin Jackson, Kendall Lamb. You have Keon Smith, also a tackle. That's 6. Robert Jones, they brought back. Liam Eichenberg, Jack Driscoll, that's 9. Jackson Powers Johnson would be 10. And then early 3 on an 11th offensive lineman who would feasibly be no better than your 4th offensive tackle this year. It just feels like overkill to me. But if you told me you went a different direction with the first pick in Jackson Powers Johnson and then came back and got Blake Fisher, I'd say, okay. If you went a different direction than Blake Fisher, not that I don't like Blake Fisher, but just you're interested in investing in offensive line, but I think I think you're over investing in offensive line with that mock draft, I guess would be my feedback. The next one comes from Chris in White Plains. Chris did one himself, and he did a first round mock, and he gave the Dolphins, the Cardinals moving up from 27, and then the Dolphins getting Johnny Newton at 27. If Arizona, so what I would say with this, because it's not a 7 round, it's just a single round mock, but down to 27 and getting Johnny Newton, Arizona moving up in front of Philly for Kool-Aid McKinstry. If Philly wants to, or if Arizona wants to play that game, like if Arizona's willing and they have an embarrassment of riches of draft capital, but if they were going to say, let's move up and be aggressive instead of continuing to hoard draft picks, they're a great candidate to do this. And they do have 6 picks in the top 100, and then the 7th pick is at 104. So they're a team that makes a lot of sense from a surplus. 4, 27, 35, 66, 71 they got from Tennessee, and then they got 90 from Houston. It's like, and then 104 is their own pick. That's a great team to play ball with if they're willing to do it. My question is, for a team that needs as much as they do, are they willing to move up? I don't have the answer. Chris, with our next mock draft. This comes, I believe this is from Pro Football Network. So let's see. No trades early. Troy Fautanu at 21. Xavier Legette at 55. LSU defensive tackle Jordan Jefferson at 158. Mohamed Kamara edge from Colorado State at 184. Kamani Vidal, running back from Troy at 208. Dominique Hampton with a late round pick, and then Kyle Hergel, interior offensive lineman from Boston College, with another late round pick. You told me 3 of the top 4 picks are Fautanu, Legette, and Mohamed Kamara. Yeah, we're going to do backflips, right? I think the same thing here is, I don't know, ESPN, I don't really like what ESPN's mock draft simulator is how it's running right now. They just brought it back. It feels like they still need to iron out some of the kinks with it. But one of the cool things about their simulator is it gives you player percentages of reaching certain picks. And Fautanu for Miami, I think it's sitting at about 30% odds. So if indeed that comes to pass, and I would expect, if he's there in more than 30%, if he makes it to 21, guys are going to stick and pick just because everybody is kind of onto him because of how hard I've been pounding the table here. If you get that 30% outcome approximately, and it's an inexact science, everybody knows that, then yeah, you run that card and you feel really good about it. Charles with our next mock. This comes from NFL Mock Draft Database. And there was a lot of moving. I'm not even going to bother trying to keep tabs of the trades that were happening here, but just know our first pick comes at 24. So you move down 3 spots. Byron Murphy is the pick for the defensive tackle from Texas. Cooper Beebe at 50, moving up a few spots to get Cooper Beebe with that next pick at 50. The added, I assume from the trade down from 21, which you probably got a better deal than you should have unless you traded up again. Pick is Jonah Ellis, the edge from Utah. Jermaine Burton, wide receiver, Alabama. Cornerback Elijah Jones, Boston College. And then Texas offensive tackle Christian Jones with another late pick. So Murphy, we've covered. Cooper Beebe. I don't love moving up for Cooper Beebe just because I don't think he's a great scheme fit specifically for Miami. He's a smooth player for how big and boxy he is. But if the entire point of emphasis of this offensive line is explode off the ball, get off the ball, he's a little bit more of like a raw phone booth power kind of guy as compared, at least in my mind, as compared to the dynamic athleticism really explode off the ball. I think there's other day three, especially knowing that you have picks at 87 and 108, however you ended up getting them in this simulation. There's other options, including like Dominic Pooney from Kansas, who played tackle for Kansas. I think he's a more dynamic athlete. So to move up, presumably give up extra draft capital, assuming you didn't just flip picks, to get Cooper Beebe is the thing that I kind of get hung up on. Maybe a little early on Jonah Ellis at 87, too. If you told me you got him at like 158, I'd feel better about it. Jermaine Burton's an outstanding ad for this Dolphins offense, by the way. Burton's a player we haven't talked about. I did him yesterday. Over a depth of target last year, over 20 yards, like vertical type player, runs a 4.45. So he runs fast, but he's not blazing fast. The questions with Jermaine Burton, I know everybody who's insiders kind of alludes to some of the off the field questions that they had with Jermaine Burton. He's been to a lot of programs. He's bounced around. That leaves some questions. It sounds like there's some maturity questions there as well. But if you're talking about a day three pick, an early day three pick, the talent far exceeds that. Like it just off talent and the tape, he's probably a second round player. So to get him day three in this offense, I think makes a lot of sense. Now we have more mocks coming than what we're going to have time for, but we'll get as many as we can here on this Power to the Pod. Make sure that you stick with us. No trades from Gil. I like this one because it's no trade. So let's keep it dialed in on this one first. Johnny Newton, defensive tackle, Illinois, with the first pick at 21. Cooper Beebe, making another appearance at 55. Ketan Oladapo, safety from Oregon State at 158. Christian Jones, offensive tackle from Texas. It's a right tackle at 184. George Holani, running back from Boise State at 198. And Dominique Hampton, safety from Washington at 241. So combination of Newton and Beebe. What I like about this style of draft is obviously you're replacing your two biggest losses directly. You're getting high volume snap takers in each of those two spots. That's the unique part about Newton as compared to some of the other guys on the interior defensive line. And look, they're going to rotate, right? They're not going to just play Sealer and Wilkins 800 plus snaps a year like they've been doing. I think it's a totally different ideology with Anthony Weaver, and they're going to want those guys to be fresh, and there's more value. And especially not paying a guy $27 million per season, you feel a little bit less pressure to play a guy 900 plus snaps, right? And like Zach Sealer, it's like, okay, he's getting 13. If he plays 60, 65% of the snaps, it's a little bit more easily digestible than a guy who's getting twice that money that would only play 60% of the snaps. That's one of the ideological things with like the Jets and what they're paying Quinnen Williams, right? They're paying Quinnen Williams like $23 million. And I think Quinnen Williams, has he played 65% snaps in a season once? Please hold. I'm going to float around and produce this thing, to borrow the phrase from Locked On NFL Scouting and Draft Dudes. Okay, so the last two seasons, 69% this year. But that's the only time he's played more than 65% of the snaps was 2023. And he's never played 70% of the snaps. He's getting $23 million a season, right? So knowing that your financial commitment to Zach Sealer is in a certain stratosphere, it makes it a little easier in my mind to have the rotation. Even if the appeal of Johnny Newton is, that dude's going to take a lot of snaps. Okay. Pikachu Master on Discord is the name. And we have Troy Fautanu at 24. You got greedy. Dude, you traded in every spot. Shame on you, sir. You traded you didn't make a single pick other than Torrey Taylor, the punter from Iowa, at 241. The first and only pick that you made that's an organic pick from Miami came at 241. Troy Fautanu at 24. Rook Ororhoho. For the defensive tackle from Clemson, I'm still working on the phonetics of it. It's like I get off air and I do it, and it's like, yeah, that's how it's phonetically pronounced. And then I do it on a show, and I'm like, I'm 90% sure that's not right. So sorry, Rook. Defensive tackle from Clemson. That's at 59, so you move down a few spots there. Pick up an extra day 2 pick, a third-round pick, draft Marshawn Nealon from Western Michigan. Then 2 earlier day 3 picks than what Miami's currently scheduled for, and you pull Mason McCormick and Cade Stover, then Torrey Taylor. I like how you managed to work your way around the board. This was a Pro Football Network simulation. Do I realistically think that this level of mobility is feasible for Miami? Probably not. I'll tell you, if you trade down from Troy Fautanu at 21, you better have had like Jared Verse, Byron Murphy, Troy Fautanu, Leetu Latu. You better have had like a murderer's row of guys available at 21. Otherwise, just stick and pick. Don't get greedy. Rook is a player we haven't really talked about. I love to see Austin Clark work with him, though. He's a really fascinating player. I remember doing an evaluation for him when I was with Draft Network about a year ago. And Rook was late to football, but he has big time physical ability and tools at his disposal. As far as like being an athlete, being disruptive, it's just you're waiting for the light bulb to come on. So Rook, from a athletic profile standpoint, 6'4", 295 pounds. Okay, it's a good start. He looks like a pro wrestler. Like he's built really well. Not a lot of bad weight on his frame. He has 34-inch arms. He had a 1.67 10-yard split, which is 89th percentile for interior defensive lineman. He ran a 4.9, which is 89th percentile. His vertical jump was 32 inches. That's 80th percentile. He had a standing broad jump of 9 feet 8 inches, which is 95th percentile. He had 29 bench press reps. With 34-inch arms, that's a crazy number. This is a crazy athlete. And Austin Clark has done a lot of good work. So while maybe the year one impact is you're a little worried about, what I would say for Rook is getting him working with Anthony Weaver and Austin Clark is a big-time upside pick. It's just a question of, do you want a big-time upside pick with your second-round choice, particularly when then in turn you draft Marshawn Nealon with your second day 2 pick as an edge out of Western Michigan, who I think is another player who is a big-time developmental type of player. Luciano ran 2 mocks for us here. We're going to go with the first one because it's some names we haven't talked about yet. Cooper DeJean, the pick at 29. There's a trade down here. Another trade down from 55. The next pick's Michael Hall, defensive tackle from Ohio State. Another Xavier Legette cameo that I think is way too late versus when he's predictably going to get drafted. Dominic Pooney, offensive lineman from Kansas. Austin Booker, edge from Kansas. Miami, I believe I saw, is scheduled a 30 visit for Austin Booker. And he will be, if not already, I believe it's early next week at the facility for a visit. That's an interesting player on the edge. Length, he's not the biggest. He's 240 pounds, but he's got prototypical length. He's really smooth and fluid. I think that's the thing that stands out about Austin Booker the most, is just how kind of not like run the edge and dip the inside shoulder and take those at high speed turns type of loose, but just like his overall body pliability is really good body control, and that stands out. And then Isaiah Adams, offensive lineman from Illinois, with another pick at 158, and then a couple of additional late day 3 picks. But I want to keep this conversation on Cooper DeJean and Michael Hall as options. I think these are realistic options for Miami with their current organic picks. Cooper DeJean is a secondary player. He plays safety. He plays corner. He plays nickel. He plays line. Like there's a level of versatility here, and he's an extremely good tackler. So there's versatility, there's tackling ability that when you consider what Baltimore did with Kyle Hamilton, we're assuming Jalen Ramsey is going to be the featured player in that level of versatility within the defense. But Jalen Ramsey, is he a long-term version of that? And we've talked about how Miami does need another safety. I happen to agree with what Joe Rose said yesterday when we did the pre-draft State of the Union with Joe Rose. Another safety on this roster that you feel like can play meaningful snaps for you is a must. I don't think DeJean's getting past Philly and Green Bay, though. So, I don't think he's a candidate to trade down and get. He was on the honorable mentions list for the do not trade away from list. I like him quite a bit. He's an excellent athlete. And then Michael Hall has some length to him. I think of the kind of beyond the first tier of defensive tackles, I think this is the guy who has the best pass rush menu right now. He's got some length, 33.5-inch arms, 6'2", 290 pounds. Would probably be a rotational pass rush guy for you early in his career. But I do think he has enough pass rush savvy that he can be successful in that kind of role. So if Miami does want to go with a disruptive presence on the interior, which they don't really have the pass rush specialist right now, Michael Hall, I think, would be a good option. That is going to do it for us. I've got I think I covered about half of these mocks. So my condolences to Jack and Ed and Danny and Peter and Danny again. I'm going to text you guys all separately. Wade, shout out to you guys. I appreciate you guys. I'm going to be getting back to you about your mock drafts up next, but I got to wrap up the show. We're on a shot clock here on Locked On Dolphins, so we got to get out of here. I'm Kyle Krabs. Keep it locked in right here on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. I appreciate you guys for checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. I will be back again soon for more Miami Dolphins content coming your way. Fins up.